plane and dimension, so a lot of Christians get really upset about this, but by the strict definition of the word, Jesus' dad was extraterrestrial.
Oh, yes.
It's kind of funny, but there's much more to that story as far as Mary's genetics, and it goes back to Lyra and things of that nature.
Oh yes, I love the creation story. I mean, I'm not religious myself, but I do like reading, the creation story. And there's a lot of stories in the Bible that are obviously, depict extraterrestrial encounters.
Oh yeah, Ezekiel is very clear on that. Where, he talks.
Oh yeah.
Talks about wheels within wheels. And a light coming out of the firmament. It looks like a shiny disc or whatever, and then he says it has bronze feet like a calf, and when it lands, it has fire and brimstone coming out from underneath, and it sounds like 1,000 rushing rivers. And anybody nowadays, when you read that story, you go, "Wow, that was a landing."
Yeah, it was. Yep, it's exactly what I'm saying when you read it.
Yeah, wheels within wheels with flashing lights, all about them came out of it and were zipping all over the place. So it's pretty obvious that was definitely, a contact.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's obvious. And, there's been so much contact throughout history. And that's one of the things that I just couldn't agree with throughout growing up in teenage years and still to this day. When I was little, they tried so hard to, especially my mother, who's a dear woman. She's a wonderful woman, but she's very much on the fear side, and she's awakening now, thankfully. But when I was little, she used to say that anything that was not Jesus was the devil. And I used to ask her, "Well, Mom, you've had experiences with strange things in the sky. Do you think they were evil?" And she would say, "Yes, they are." And I was like, "Well, they didn't ever hurt you." And she never used to respond because I believe in her soul it resonated that, that I was right.
There's frescoes all throughout Europe with UFOs in them. We have those on our site. And it just seems like whenever, they started back engineering these things in Germany way back in the 30s before that. But it seems right after the crash site, before that, it was part of religion, basically. And if you go throughout, some of the Latin American countries, and you talk about UFOs, they just accept it. And most of them see it as a very holy thing. And that's where it's painted on all the frescoes in churches throughout Europe and other areas. But in the States here, it was turned into this demonized thing, and everybody was censored, hushed up, or they give you the crazy look and everything else, and that was all orchestrated because they didn't want people to know that they had the technology, that they had the crashed UFOs, and that they were back engineered. So there was a major movement to demonize it, to make people look crazy, or just try to make it go away altogether. And now the Catholic Church is saying, that UFOs are real, they are here, and they're not to be demonized, and they're part of the greater family of man. So,
which is totally amazing to me because I never, not once, pictured them coming out like that. And a lot has changed since my awakening started when I was younger, because as you were saying earlier, people who you not once think would even understand what you're talking about suddenly surprise me by saying things that they've had contact or they know the truth of things, and I'm like, wow, okay, so many people are waking up now. It seems like it accelerated, too, after the year 2000 alone. It just accelerated.
Yeah, they did a time CNN poll with 86%. I think it's above that now, but 86% of the people believe UFOs exist and that there is a government cover-up. So I don't even know why they're trying to still cover it up, because the vast majority are onto them.
And there's so many sightings every day.
Mm-hmm.
So many ships make contact, and I have no idea why they're covering it up. And I think they're just trying to hold on to that last little bit of power that comes with hiding the UFO. Even the church came out. And, I'm like, well, if the church came out, then I'm waiting for the government to come out as well. Although many countries have already opened up their documents.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm waiting for the U.S.
I think Brazil just gave orders to open up all their documents, and they gave orders for all the pilots to come clean and start talking about their experiences. So that one in Brazil just blew wide open, and just about all the South American countries are open, and now the UK is opening up their files and some of the other ones. So, good old America, where free speech and freedom and truth and the American way and everything else seems to be way behind the rest of the world.
Lagging.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to hear more about some of your experiences and just, the awakening that you went through and some of the information that you've been given during this awakening.
Well, one of the most powerful experiences I've had to this day, I think, is before the September 11 attacks. I was taken aboard a ship first, and then we transported to an aircraft, to a plane, and we flew over New York City, and the light being next to me, and he was so beautiful. He was so radiant. I could barely look because there was this radiant white light just all over him. And he looked like an Egyptian, but he was all dressed in white, and also the white light that was just everywhere around him. We were on the plane, and he turned to me. Now, this to me, at the time I called it a dream, but now I know it, after further research, I believe it was an astral experience. And he turned to me, and he said, "This plane's going to crash in New York City, and there's going to be another one. But I don't want you to panic, because you'll be fine, and there's going to be a lot of loss and heartache, but this is going to be a sort of catalyst for a change that has to happen." And I remember after that he disappeared, and the seat next to me was empty, and the plane crashed, and I remember walking up out of the rubble from wherever I was, and I couldn't see anything. All I could see was smoke. It was everywhere. I couldn't see anything, and then the smoke cleared, and I saw these a lot of beings that kind of looked like him, and they were all dressed in white, and they were all glowing with that beautiful white light. They were holding their arms out to me, and they were saying, if I remember correctly, they were saying, "Do you want to come with us, or do you want to continue to help people here afterwards, after this mess happens?" And I chose to stay and help people, and they said it was a very important task. And then I woke up in my room, and shortly after, that's when 9/11 happened.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another time when me and my roommate were actually followed home by a craft. We decided to go for a midnight snack. And as soon as we left my apartment, I looked up to the sky. I just had the urge to look up. And I looked up, and I saw these, exactly see a definite outline, but I saw what appeared to be a light. There was at first a very bright white light, and it would slowly change to blue, then purple, and then back. And I told my roommate, I said, look at that. What is that? And he's like, I don't know, but I've never seen a craft like that before. I said, neither have I. And it was just hovering, and I told him, do crafts hover? Like, it's just hovering. It's not moving, and it's completely silent. And he's like, I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. So, and it was really low. It was just above the treetops, really, really low. And we started walking, and I noticed the lights were slowly moving, and they were trailing us, like floating or whatever it was doing beside us. And he went to the store. I said, I'm going to wait out here because I want to see the lights go away. So I went in the store, and I'm looking at the lights, and they're just hovering in the sky. And I'm looking at everyone around me, and I'm like, how could no one see this? Because no one saw it but me and my roommate. Or they were ignoring it, either of the two. So we went outside, and then we went to another store, which we went inside, and those lights were still there, and we were just hovering. And then they followed us back home. So I said, you know what? I told my roommate, let's see if this is really them. And it was like instinct, like I knew to do this. And I said, I'm going to send them a telepathic message. And if it works out the way I think it is, then it's really them. So I stood there looking at the lights hovering by my apartment, and I telepathically said, if you're really who I think you are, then you'll meet me at my balcony on the other side of the apartment complex. So I ran inside and went to my balcony, and sure enough, they were in front of my balcony. And I was sitting there, and I was looking at the light, and it was so beautiful. And I feel like, for some reason, they felt that they had to protect us. I'm not sure why, but I felt like they followed us because maybe we were in danger that night, and they wanted to make sure that we made it home safe. Because after that, I watched it just slowly just disappear. They just slowly disappeared. And my roommate thought that was the coolest experience ever. But it was through it's really through all these contact experiences that I've had that pushed my awakening, into overdrive. One time, I think what really, really set my awakening in motion was the time that I went to see a psychic. I wasn't really never into psychics, but I went to see one because at the time, my friend was like, oh, come on, you should really do it. Try something new. So I said, okay, I'll go. And I went to a psychic, and it's right as soon as I went in there and I paid her. I thought, oh, she's going to tell me I need to buy some potion or something. But to my surprise, the psychic looked at me and she said, you know what? You need to stop believing these people who tell you that you're crazy or who tell you that you need medication or you need therapy. She said, you're not crazy, but you need to find your true self. She said, you're not accepting it like you should, and once you do, a lot is going to open up to you. So I left there because I already had an idea of what I was, but I never really put two and two together until I had an experience. Now, I know a lot of people are not keen to accept the Zetas, the Greys, as some of them being benevolent. But I have to say that my first contact with the Zeta wasn't so pleasant, which was when I was 8 years old, which was, I think, when we saw that ship in the sky in New York, and I was little. I think that they took me that night, it's not really pleasant, but it wasn't as, the worst. But this experience that I had was pleasant, and I was outside And I saw a ship, and I saw